The Citizens Political Reporter, and I'm joined by Congressman John Katko, who's, of course, running for re-election in the 24th Congressional District. Congressman, thanks for taking some time out and talking with us today.
Happy to be here, my friend.
So, I had a few issues to talk about, and we'll certainly get to those. But, just a quick campaign note. Your campaign just announced that you raised close to $1 million in this past quarter. You have over, I think, close to 1.3 million cash on hand, which is significant. What does that support mean for your campaign, especially in this competitive House race?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Robert, and hello, everybody out there. It's stunning how much support we're getting from the community and from my constituents. And the money we raised this quarter was by far the most we've ever raised in the 6 years I've been in office. And it's a stunning amount, really. And we have a very lean and mean operation here, and we spend our money wisely, and we're gonna be ready for the stretch run now. I think what it is, it's just reflective of the fact that we're having more support than ever for us now. And I'm very humbled by that. And I'm excited moving forward to see what happens.
So the issues that I wanted to get to include, and we'll start with the COVID recovery, because there's a couple different pieces to this, of course, and we'll start with the health side of things. Obviously, the toll, we add the number of fatalities by the day. It's we're seeing a resurgence here in central New York. And you've seen this up close as the congressman for this district, the federal side of things. But what more needs to be done on the federal side to help address the health impact of this pandemic?
Well, first of all, obviously we need more testing. We need more rapid testing out there. We need more screening. We need more contact tracing, like we're doing. We've done a very good job as Central New York of following the guidance of our leaders and following the guidance of the Centers for Disease Control. So overall, we have not been hit anywhere near as hard as some other places, and I'm very grateful for the leadership locally on that regard. We've been able to get a lot of money to the front lines during this crisis. From a healthcare standpoint, I definitely want to talk about the business standpoint in a minute, and the economic standpoint. But from a healthcare standpoint, one of the key things we've been able to do is help hospitals keep their lights on. We've been able to get close to $100 million to our 6 hospitals. And I remember the hospitals, one in Auburn, as a matter of fact, Matt Chatterton wrote a letter to the editor scolding someone who said that we weren't doing enough to help hospitals because we were doing an awful lot. And so we have done a lot to get money to the front lines. What we need to do going forward, we need another package. We need another COVID relief package from an economic standpoint and from a healthcare standpoint. There's we put together a package with the Problem Solvers Caucus, 25 Republicans and 25 Democrats. And the package laid out in the only bipartisan package we really had since March that lays out everything we can do. And some of the things included in there were a tremendous amount of money for testing, a tremendous amount of money for getting schools open and keeping them safe, money for state and local governments, money for healthcare facilities. And that package, I think, is a shining example of what you can do when you work together. And I think getting them money to the front lines would be very, very helpful. And we need to get done sooner rather than later. And we need both sides to drop the politics and get it done. And that's what we're hoping to do. And I think if we do, it's going to be a huge boost for our community, both from a healthcare standpoint and from an economic standpoint.
With I know that this topic, has come up in this campaign, of course, with your votes on the HEROES Act, which is the Democratic proposal, and then there was another proposal. What exactly with those bills was the issue? Because I think most of that bill, you've said, I know in previous statements that you support, the aid for businesses, another round of stimulus checks, et cetera. But you've mentioned that there are points in that bill which, aren't related to COVID recovery. Could you elaborate on what exactly were the problems with those bills?
Yeah. Quite frankly, I'm not alone, and it was not they were partisan exercises, and they were loaded what we call poison pills. But look at My good friend and colleague, Anthony Brindisi, a Democrat, voted against the latest package as well. And for the same reason I did. And we got to stop these partisan messaging bills. My opponent, that's all she's relying on to rebut anything or attack anything I've done is partisan bills. That doesn't get it done. And we've delivered so much for Central New York already with 120,000 jobs the Small Business Administration estimates we've been able to save because of what we've been able to do. And more than $200 million in Paycheck Protection Program money, $1,200 cash payments to individuals, all these things in the hospitals, like I mentioned as well. But you know, when Democrats are voting against a Democratic bill that didn't allow any Republican input, that goes to show you there's a lot of good things in that bill I like. I like a lot of the provisions, but then you have provisions in there that they know are non-starters, like letting individuals out of prison in wholesale clause. So that's just not something we can abide by. And it has nothing to do with COVID and many of the other poison pills that they had in there. So even when there's a substantial number of moderate Democrats like Brindisi vote against the bill, I don't think I have to defend my vote against it. What I do have to say is we should do what I did and what Brindisi did and others in the Problem Solvers Caucus and work on a bipartisan solution. And that's what we did. And that's what we're hoping is going to get passed. And for sure, our bipartisan proposal has jump-started the talks and is forcing the people back to the table. And myself, Brindisi, and many others are proud of that fact.
To look at, you started talking about this with the economic recovery in your response to the first question, but
yeah,
just looking at the scope of this, there's still people unemployed. Some jobs are coming back, but still people are, there's still people struggling. But then, the businesses that are affected by this, whether it's restaurants or in other industries, it's quite a significant hit, and there's certainly concern that we haven't seen the worst of it yet. So, on that front, what more do we need to do to really address that and make sure that the economic impact isn't so harsh?
Sure. I don't think there's a pundit out there or an economic analyst out there who doesn't think we need another tranche of COVID relief. And that's exactly what the Problem Solvers Caucus package did. We talked about the healthcare side, but let me talk about the economic side of things. We need another round of $1,200 payments to individuals. And we need to continue the unemployment insurance issue. And then we fix the unemployment issue, basically saying if you can get up to $600 above your unemployment insurance, and it's capped at what you were making before. So you're not going to have an unfair advantage when you're on unemployment and get more than you got when you were working. So we fixed that issue, but we also made sure that people are taken care of. It provides another $135 billion with a B, billion dollars in healthcare, in paycheck protection money to the front lines of businesses. Businesses are suffering right now still. Businesses are teetering on the verge of going out, and somewhat many have gone out. What we've done so far is saved these businesses thus far. We need another round to get them through basically the back end of this mess. A lot of people are afraid to go on travel. A lot of people are afraid to go out in public until there's a vaccine. By all accounts, we're going to have a very good vaccine or more than one vaccine by the end of this year. And so we need to get through to get over the hump to that time. And that's what this Problem Solvers Caucus bill did. It also provided $500 billion with a B, $500 billion in direct payments to state, local, county, and city governments of all levels, so that we can get money to the front line, so they can plug their budget gaps. Onondaga County, for example, has tens of millions of dollars in sales tax decline because of places like Destiny USA being shuttered for months. Destiny USA provides more than $50 million a year alone, that one entity alone, in sales tax revenue to the city and county. That was shut for many, many months. So there's a huge shortfall in sales tax revenue. So the funding for state and local governments would be there as well. And so I guess people should just put down their swords on both sides of the aisle. The leadership on both sides has failed in this regard to get a bipartisan package. And instead of pointing to partisan bills that and then arguing that I should have voted for them and whether they knew they were going nowhere, we should have a bill like the Problem Solvers Caucus that myself and Brindisi and our bipartisan members of our caucus are pushing forward. And I think we could get it done. I think it will get done. Probably we'll have to wait till after the election because Pelosi doesn't want to give the president a win. But right after the election, we'll get it done. And I think it's really going to help businesses. I'm excited about it for them.
What's your message to those within your own party who kind of shoot down the idea of state and local government aid? I know that Mitch McConnell hasn't really warmed to that idea. I think the White House, is willing to go to some extent. Obviously, Pelosi's Speaker Pelosi's proposal. I think initially it was close to $1 trillion for state and local aid. Maybe there's a compromise somewhere in the middle there, but I guess what would you say to your party's leadership, or what have you said to your party's leadership about the need for this?
I would say to listen to the president, because the president basically endorsed the Problem Solvers Caucus plan. And I would tell the leaders in the House, Pelosi, and the leader and the Democratic leader in the Senate, Schumer, and I would tell the Republican leader in the Senate, McConnell, and the Republican leader in the House, McCarthy, cut the crap, get it done. The White House behind it. You have bipartisan support for our proposal. Let's get it done, because that proposal has plenty of spending. It's not $1 trillion, but $500 billion is an awful lot of money, and more than it would really help make up for the lost tax revenue. And every minute we wait, more people are suffering. Every minute we wait, more businesses are suffering, and every minute we wait, the economy suffers. So I think that we need to get this done. And if we do get it done, I think it's going to have a huge positive impact going forward.
Let's wrap up the COVID discussion with broader healthcare question for you, which that this is something that especially in a pandemic, I think receives even more attention. But it's always been a top issue, as you know. You've done a few of these elections, and healthcare is always a top issue. But with this, what is needed going forward? I know that there's a lot of concern about the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, and protecting protections for those with pre-existing conditions. So what's your plan? I guess simply put, to address healthcare going forward?
Well, first of all, I want to note that with respect to the Affordable Care Act, there's only one candidate in this race that wants to keep it unless there's an adequate replacement. That's me. My opponent wants to get rid of the Affordable Care Act and replace it with Medicare for all. That's a fact. And so she kind of attacks me and then about the Affordable Care Act, and then she turns around and she wants to replace it with Medicare for all. But the bottom line is, I'm one of the very few Republicans who stopped my party, who stopped my president from repealing the Affordable Care Act. And I'm very, very proud of that. I've kept my promise by saying we should not have a repeal of the Affordable Care Act unless there's an adequate replacement ready to go. And there's several fundamental pillars to me, some technical, some broad-based. Now, I'll lay them out for you. Number one, we need more competition for healthcare. We're starting to allow interstate competition, but there's a lot of wrinkles to iron out. Blue Cross Blue Shield, for example, has 74% of this market. I mean, competition would be a good thing. We need medical malpractice reform that Democrats routinely stop because of the medical malpractice lobby is so powerful. But we need real, true medical malpractice reform. If you turn on the TV any day, there's a couple of things you see. You see medical malpractice commercials or medical malpractice lawyers saying, tell me if you've ever had this issue or that issue so we can help you sue somebody. And the other thing you see on TV all the time is prescription drug commercials. And I think we need prescription drug price reform that's real. And that strikes a proper balance between getting drug costs under control, but not taking away the impetus for the pharmaceuticals to do research and find new cures. So we have to have that balance. And HR 19, which I support, is one of those issues. Another thing you got to consider is this. 10% of the people generate 90% of the costs for healthcare. 10% of people generate 90% of the costs. If we took the economic drivers from the Affordable Care Act, the revenue sources, and put them into a high risk, put those individuals into a high risk pool, and then funded that high risk pool to help to defray those costs, and then put the rest of the individuals on the open market, the 90% of Americans who are generally very healthy, their health insurance with all the other changes would be much lower. The last thing we need to do is continue to do what we've already done, and that is fund 21st century cures and other things that send billions and billions and billions of dollars to the National Institutes of Health. And they work in a collaborative manner with the private sector to try and find cures for big, big cost drivers in healthcare. And I'll give you one example. My father died of Alzheimer's last year. And watching him deteriorate was gut-wrenching, to say the least. And they project that Alzheimer's is going to be the #1 cost driver for healthcare in the next generation, and certainly in the next decade. Since the money we sent in the 21st Century Cures Act to National Institutes of Health a few years ago, they were already seeing promising advancements in Alzheimer's research. If we could ever find a cure for Alzheimer's, it would save the economy tens of trillions, with a T, trillions of dollars over the next decade or two. That is a remarkable thing. It's the #1 cost driver. So we have to do all those things, and it's not easy to do. But I will never and have never voted to get rid of the Affordable Care Act unless there's an adequate replacement. And just so the record's clear, I've never voted once to get rid of the pre-existing conditions coverage for persons with pre-existing conditions. In fact, I've done things. I've voted for bills that specifically protect persons with pre-existing conditions. And I also voted for the first time that Republicans done this since 1994, I believe. I voted for the Democratic rules package because it had a provision in that rules package which allowed the House of Representatives to take legal action against the administration or anybody who tries to get rid of pre-existing conditions. So I put my money where my mouth is, and I'm sticking with that. I think that's a good plan, and I think it's better than a government-run system where our taxes are going to go through the roof to pay for it, and that's what Medicare for All is.
Shifting to addressing systemic racism, being a member of Congress, you certainly have a lot of power, and being this district's representative certainly play a role in what happens at the local level as well. So, this is an issue that covers really a lot of different sub issues. Whether you get into housing, education, et cetera. So, what do you see your role in being to address, the systemic racism and whether it's, again, education, housing, how would you pursue that goal?
Sure. Well, I mean, when you talk about systemic racism, I guess you got to break it down into different categories. I think the best way to do it is to talk about police reform, which is obviously needed. The vast majority of police officers do a wonderful job, but the George Floyd incident and others like it have taught us that there's still very significant issues with racism in this country that we need to address, and we need to acknowledge that they exist, and we need to embrace them. I'm very proud to have taken a very big leadership role in this regard in this Congress. Myself, Pete Stauber from Minnesota, who's a police officer. I was a former federal prosecutor. Karen Bass, who was on a short list to become vice president for Biden, and Hakeem Jeffries from New York City, and many others from the Congressional Black Caucus and the Problem Solvers Caucus, of which I'm a part, got together and we went through it and crafted a substantial piece of legislation that is still being considered, and I'm very proud of it. The legislation would ban the use of chokeholds, except if it's a life or death situation for an officer. It would do many things to hold police officers accountable, be racial training, racial sensitivity training, diversity incentives for police departments, having police departments meet specific standards. And if they don't meet those standards, they don't get any money. Many other provisions that would be very, very good. Not allowing a police officer to go from one department to another if they were released in that department for disciplinary reasons. And this package has got widespread support. It is being considered in the Senate. Kamala Harris, the vice presidential nominee for the Democrats, has put a hold on it in the Senate until after the election. So politics have creeped into it, but I am very confident that we will get a police reform package, and it will be an outstanding bipartisan package, and I'm right at the forefront of it. We also have to understand the more subtle areas of racism. For example, the lack of funding to inner cities for certain programs, making sure individuals in impoverished areas have an opportunity to develop more. And so in that regard, and it's been colored to me by what I've seen with gang prosecutions and what these kids, when they were younger, went through and what they didn't have in the inner cities, has really forced me to be very active with respect to food availability for children, early intervention and early feeding programs for kids, early literacy, lead paint programs. I've got Ben Carson up here, and the end result was we're getting more money for lead paint remediation we've ever had in the history of our city. Those types of things that intervene with the kids early and give an opportunity to get a leg up and in and out of poverty. And lastly, I'll say that tax reform, which my opponent and the Democrats really hammer, has been a boon for minorities in this country because we had the lowest unemployment in the history of our country for African Americans and Hispanics up to the point where COVID took root. And that was a direct result of the tax reform that we did and the ability we gave individuals and businesses to invest more in their workplaces, and also with our trade deals, which allowed us to have stronger economies back home. So it's all interrelated. And I've been at the forefront of all of it. And I'm very, very proud of the work we've done in a bipartisan manner to address this issue. And we can't stop addressing this issue and having these dialogues until we get a real good handle on this. We're going in the right direction. We need a long way to go.
Since you touched on police reform a little bit already, I'll ask you about another part of it, which we have seen in certain parts of the country increases in crime. It's tough to say why that is, although during the pandemic, people losing their jobs, the shutdown. I know early on they talked about increase in domestic violence incidents because people were in their homes, and then you get into mental health episodes and that kind of thing as well. But with that, just given your background, of course, too, what do you see the solution as to address this going forward? Because it's certainly something that even Governor Cuomo has said is a concern, especially in places like New York City.
Crime is skyrocketing in New York City. Crime is going through the roof here in central New York, in the inner city. Syracuse is on the verge of probably topping out at the highest number of murders they've ever had in the history of the city, which is stunning. Robberies in places and home invasions in places like the Strathmore section of the city and all over the county are going through the roof. And I think it's directly attributed to some of the softening of the laws that my opponent supports. The bail reform has absolutely contributed to this. The bail reform was brought about to try and address issues with respect to the lower income individuals sitting in jail pending trial simply because they couldn't afford bail. Well, we can address that and pinpoint that, but you don't just throw out bail for whole levels of crimes, regardless of the dangerousness of the individual. Individuals getting arrested and waiting for trial, but particularly since trials have been put off during the pandemic, have put a lot of dangerous criminals back on the street. And my opponent supports that. And she gave no equivocation as to bail reform when it first came out. Now she's saying she doesn't want to let dangerous criminals out. Well, you're letting dangerous criminals out, and the crime is going up. And there's a direct correlation between the two. And it's not just if an individual is charged with a mid-level crime, and it's not a crime by definition that's dangerous, but that individual has a very long and dangerous history and has a very long track record of not showing up for trial or not doing a pretrial release or getting in trouble on pretrial release, there should be a substantial bail for that individual as an incentive, if it does get out, to try and behave. There's no incentive now. They get appearance tickets and they're back out on the street right away. It's like a revolving door of justice. And that's contributing absolutely to the crime wave that we're seeing. And so then my opponent after that came out, and then she said, well, I don't want to let dangerous criminals out. She goes, well, it's not a federal issue anyways. Well, it most certainly is a federal issue, and she knows it because on the federal level, both President Biden and as recently as the vice president's debate, vice presidential candidate Kamala Harris said that they want to eliminate all bail, not just on the federal level, on the state level as well, not just certain categories of bail, all cash bails. So it is absolutely something that's coming to the federal level if they get into power, and it's a very serious issue. So it's something we have to address. I'm all for having a discussion to address the inequities with respect to bail reform for individuals who can't afford even lower levels of bail. That's not right. We need to fix that. But to throw the baby out with the bathwater and make our country much less safe because of it, that's just wrong.
Moving on to taxes, I know that you there's a difference in this race. I think you noted it earlier that Dana Balter, your opponent, she supports getting rid of the 2017 tax law, replacing it with something else. you voted for that law a few years back, and I know in conversations with you, you still support that. Why do you feel that law is best, and how do you think that's helped Central New York?
Oh, sure.
In
Yeah,
2 years
I
it's
mean,
been in place.
this is one of the fundamental differences between my opponent and myself is that I just don't believe that you can tax your way out of every problem. And I do believe that lowering taxes and allowing businesses and individuals to have more money in their pocket makes our economy stronger. And the best indicator of that is what I already mentioned. The tax reform was working. Businesses were booming. Individuals were having more take-home pay than ever. African-American unemployment, Hispanic unemployment, unemployment for women was at all-time lows. In fact, the 2 years preceding the COVID outbreak, 74% of the jobs in the US were being filled by women. That's a remarkable number. The tax reform was working. Then I looked at Coin Industrial Laundries as a very, very destitute area of the city of Syracuse, probably one of the highest poverty rates of anywhere in the country. And a business is investing millions of dollars there and it's going to create a lot of jobs locally there and revitalizing a neighborhood specifically because of the tax breaks. My opponent and the Democrats want to get rid of all that, and that's a fact. And to me, that is one of the biggest differences between the two of us. I do not believe that we can have a proper COVID recovery if, on top of everything else, when businesses are struggling and individuals are struggling, you repeal the tax cuts that made the economy hum. And then on top of that, you overlay another tax with the gigantic tax increase we'll all have to endure to satisfy their Medicare for All program. And then on top of that, just to kind of add an insult to injury, my opponent even wants to raise revenues for individuals so they can pay for public financing of campaigns. Now think about that. You're sitting there in your living room at night having a beer, watching the ball game, and then one of our commercials comes on, and you, the taxpayer, are going to have to pay for it. That's a fundamental difference between me and her. I don't think you can tax your way out of this COVID crisis. And I think I have the experience and the leadership to lead us out of this crisis. And it certainly can't be by taxing people more. It's by passing our Problem Solvers Caucus proposal and by also getting out of the way and let these individuals continue to try and invest back into their economies and get them back on their feet. You can't tax people. And by the way, the biggest recipient percentage-wise from the biggest reduction in taxes came to individuals in the $20,000 to $50,000 range. It was like anywhere from 10 to 13%. Yeah, of course, higher up on the scale, you make more money, and the smaller taxes will make more money in your pocket, of course. But one of the biggest recipients from a percentage standpoint is individuals in the $20,000 to $50,000 range. So I just think that from the fundamental question really is, who do you trust to get you out of this COVID nightmare that we're in with the economy? And I just submit that taxing your way out of it is not going to work. It's just not. It'll make things much, much worse.
I'll close with this question for you because I think you're in a position where you're in one of the most competitive districts in the country. You're running for re-election. I don't know if you'll agree with this, but this seems like your toughest re-election bid yet. What's your message to voters? Why you think you deserve a fourth term? Why they should give you a fourth term in Congress?
Sure, and that's a fair question. And every election's tough, and every cycle's tough. Listen, why I think I deserve another 2 years in Congress? I'd be honored if I got it. Is because I've done exactly what I said I was going to do when I went to Congress. I said I was going to be a bipartisan leader. I said I was going to go and build bridges instead of burning bridges down. And I've been extremely successful legislatively because I've been able to get bills passed in record numbers. I've had 65 bills pass the House. More than a couple dozen of those bills make it through the Senate and to the president's desk for signature. At least 10 or 12 by President Obama and the rest by President Trump. So that's my bipartisanship. I don't even submit a bill unless there is a Democratic member on it. And that's why I've been ranked the second most bipartisan member in all the House. Think about that. Out of 435 members, I rank more bipartisan than every single Democrat and all but one Republican. And I've delivered for Central New York because of it. Our water infrastructure packages, helping with the harmful algae blooms, helping with infrastructure, helping to keep the brownfield programs going to help clean up those chemically infested sites like what's going on in Onondaga Lake. and the water infrastructure that I continue to deliver on, and all the anti-terrorism things I've done. I've done what I said I was going to do. I said I was going to be bipartisan. I said I was going to be productive. I said I was going to get along with everybody, and I do on both sides of the aisle. And for example, Congressman Brindisi and myself vote together 70% of the time. Think about that. That's the essence of what we need in this country. We need more people with political philosophies like mine. And my opponent really is kind of a partisan far left individual. And I don't begrudge her for that. That's her views, and I respect that. It just, I don't think her views fit this district. She's way too extreme. And I'm the moderate person that I've always been, and I work with anybody at any time.
Given your relationship with Congressman Brindisi, are you hoping he wins re-election?
Listen, I wouldn't be disappointed if he did. And if he loses, I'll work with whoever comes in, which would be Claudia. No matter who gets in that seat, I'll work with them just like I would anybody else. And by the way, whether or not Trump wins is secondary to the fact, and this is immutable with me, that I will work with any president, and who's ever in office, I will do everything I can to make sure that they're as successful as possible. I felt that way about Obama. I feel that way about Trump, and I would feel that way about Biden, for sure.
I just had to put you on the spot there.
No, it's okay. It's fair game.
Great.
Well,
Congressman,
no doubt about it, man.
Congressman, appreciate your time joining us today. And as a reminder to people, absentee ballot. You can request an absentee ballot if you wish, or you can vote in person. Early voting begins October 24th and runs through November 1st, and then Election Day is Tuesday, November 3rd. So, Congressman Katko, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much. God bless.